Chapter 2: The Shadowy Organization. The Serpent's Coil. The flickering gaslight cast long shadows across Sarah's face, highlighting the worry etched deep into her usually composed features. She'd spent the last few days poring over ancient texts, deciphering cryptic prophecies, and the weight of the revelation pressed heavily upon her. The Covenant, this clandestine society of believers she'd so unexpectedly joined, felt more real now, their hushed whispers and earnest prayers a stark contrast to the escalating chaos unfolding outside. But there was another force at play, a far more sinister entity, one that threatened to not only disrupt the Rapture, but to actively prevent it. A shadowy organization, shrouded in secrecy, was manipulating global events, a serpent coiled tight, ready to strike. Their existence had been hinted at within the fragmented texts, a counterpoint to the hopeful prophecies of the Second Coming. Coded messages, interpreted by the Covenant's elders, spoke of a power that sought to usurp God's plan, a force that thrived on chaos and destruction, turning the end times into a battlefield for their own twisted ambitions. They were not merely opportunistic, they were actively working against the divine timetable, seeking to seize control of a world teetering on the precipice. Elder Jonathan, a man whose eyes held the wisdom of ages, had explained their methodology. They believe the Rapture is a weakness, a desertion of the faithful. They seek to exploit the ensuing turmoil, to establish a new world order built on their own distorted version of power. They aren't interested in salvation, they hunger for dominion. The organization, known only as the Obsidian Hand, operated from the shadows, its members cloaked in anonymity, their motives obscured by layers of deception. But the Covenant had uncovered fragments of their history, tales whispered through generations, revealing a connection to ancient pagan rituals, to forgotten deities whose power was once feared and revered, even before the rise of Christianity. They were not simply modern-day terrorists. They were the inheritors of an ancient evil, a malevolent legacy they were seeking to reignite. Their influence was subtle yet pervasive. The Covenant believed the Obsidian Hand had orchestrated several key events that escalated the global tensions, the manipulated news reports that stoked fear and distrust, the seemingly random acts of terrorism that destabilized entire nations, even the precise timing of devastating natural disasters, all contributing to a maelstrom of chaos that would serve as fertile ground for their ascendants. Sarah shivered, a cold dread seeping into her bones. This was not simply a matter of survival, it was a spiritual war, a battle for the souls of humanity, waged on a scale she had never imagined. Her past trauma, once a personal burden, now felt insignificant compared to the looming darkness. She had found purpose in the Covenant, a shared faith fueling her resolve. But the scale of the enemy's plan was staggering, a daunting task for a group so relatively small. The Covenant had begun gathering intelligence on the Obsidian Hand, piecing together fragments of their network. Their methods were discreet, relying on trusted informants and careful surveillance, a cat-and-mouse game played in the shadows. They were learning of hidden rituals, clandestine meetings, and cryptic communication networks, all part of a vast, intricate web of manipulation. Each piece of information discovered only served to reveal the terrifying scope of the Obsidian Hand's ambition. They were not just content with exploiting chaos, they were actively creating it, weaving a web of destruction to pave the way for their reign. One of the Covenant members, a former intelligence officer named David, had been instrumental in tracking the Obsidian Hand's movements. His experience in covert operations had proven invaluable, allowing him to penetrate the organization's outer layers and glean critical information. He described their methods as disturbingly efficient, their network far-reaching and deeply entrenched. They operated with a chilling precision, using seemingly unrelated events to create a domino effect of global instability. Their reach extended into the highest echelons of power, corrupting governments and manipulating economies to further their agenda. Sarah knew that time was running out. The signs of the apocalypse were multiplying, the prophecies becoming alarmingly clear. The Obsidian Hand's activities were accelerating, their grip on global events tightening with each passing day. The Covenant's strategizing sessions were tense, the atmosphere thick with a mixture of fear and determination. They debated their options, carefully weighing the risks and rewards of various actions. Their faith was their anchor, their prayers a lifeline in the turbulent sea of impending doom. But even with their faith, doubt gnawed at the edges of their resolve. The elders of the Covenant, drawing upon their combined wisdom and spiritual understanding, laid out their plan. They recognized the limitations of their resources and the overwhelming power of their adversary. Their strategy relied not on brute force, but on faith, prayer, and strategic intervention. They would use their knowledge of biblical prophecies to anticipate the Obsidian Hand's next moves, disrupting their plans where possible. They would use their influence within their existing network to expose the organization's crimes and undermine their support. And most importantly, they would pray, relying on divine intervention to guide and protect them. As Sarah listened to their plans, a surge of determination filled her. The fear still lingered, but it was overshadowed by a newfound sense of purpose. Her past trauma, the loss she had carried for so long, now fueled her resolve. She would not stand idly by while the forces of evil sought to destroy the world. She had found her calling, a mission ordained by God, to stand against the darkness and prepare for the coming of her Lord. The fight would be arduous, the odds stacked against them, but she had faith, a faith that transcended fear and doubt, a faith that would see her through the darkest hours. The weight of responsibility was immense, the enormity of the task almost unbearable. But she knew, deep in her heart, that she wasn't alone. She had the Covenant, a brotherhood and sisterhood of faith, bound together by their shared belief and their commitment to the divine plan. They would face the Obsidian Hand, not with weapons of war, but with the armor of God, with the strength of their faith, and with the unwavering belief that even in the face of utter destruction, God's ultimate victory would prevail. They would be the light in the darkness, the beacon of hope in the coming storm. The fight had begun, and Sarah was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The serpent's coil tightened, but the light of faith burned even brighter. Ancient evil. The chill that had settled over Sarah's bones wasn't just the autumn air creeping through the cracks in the old Covenant house. It was a deeper, more primal cold, the kind that seeped into your soul and froze the blood in your veins. The cryptic texts she'd been studying spoke of it, an ancient evil, a power so dark, so overwhelmingly malevolent, that it dwarfed even the anxieties of the impending global crisis. This wasn't just about the disruption of the Rapture. This was about something far more insidious, a deliberate attempt to extinguish the light of God entirely. The Obsidian Hand, as they called themselves, weren't simply orchestrating chaos. They were summoning it. Their plan wasn't about worldly conquest in the traditional sense, about armies and bombs and political maneuvering. It was far more profound, far more terrifying. They aimed to unleash an ancient evil, a primordial darkness that slumbered beneath the surface of the world, a force capable of twisting reality itself. The ancient text spoke of a being, nameless and formless, existing before creation, a fallen angel of immense power, banished to the abyss, but not destroyed. It was a being whose very essence was antithetical to God, a void that craved to consume everything, to reduce existence to nothingness. The Obsidian Hand, in their hubris and despair, sought to awaken this entity, to use its power to reshape the world in their twisted image. Their goal wasn't just dominion. It was annihilation, the obliteration of faith, of hope, of everything good and holy. Sarah traced the faded script on a brittle parchment, the words seeming to writhe before her eyes. The ancient language, a blend of Sumerian, Akkadian, and symbols yet undeciphered, spoke of rituals, sacrifices, and the opening of gateways. These weren't metaphorical gateways. The text described physical portals, breaches in the fabric of reality, through which the ancient evil could pour forth. The Obsidian Hand, it seemed, possessed a disturbingly thorough understanding of these ancient practices, a knowledge gained through centuries of meticulous research and unholy alliances. Elder Michael, the Covenant's spiritual leader, a man whose faith shone like a beacon in the encroaching darkness, had warned them. He'd spoken of the serpent's subtle work, its ability to infiltrate and corrupt, to twist intentions and exploit vulnerabilities. The Obsidian Hand wasn't a monolithic organization. It was a network of influential figures operating in the shadows, manipulating governments, controlling corporations, and even influencing religious institutions. They were the puppeteers, pulling the strings of global events, subtly nudging the world closer and closer to the precipice. "They're using fear as their weapon, Sarah," Elder Michael had said, his voice low and grave. "They spread discord, promote division, foster desperation. Fear is the fertile ground in which their darkness thrives." His words echoed in Sarah's mind as she reviewed the evidence: the escalating conflicts, the economic collapses, the rise of extremist groups, all meticulously orchestrated, all designed to create a climate of chaos and despair, a perfect breeding ground for the ancient evil's awakening. The texts detailed the Obsidian Hand's methods, the procurement of rare artifacts, the summoning of demonic entities, the construction of elaborate ritual sites across the globe. Locations emerged from the cryptic script: remote mountain monasteries, forgotten catacombs, even seemingly innocuous locations in modern cities, all connected by an intricate network of subterranean tunnels and hidden passages. Sarah shivered, imagining the network stretching beneath the surface of the world, a subterranean labyrinth of darkness teeming with unseen horrors. One particular location stood out: a vast, abandoned temple complex deep within the Amazon rainforest. The text described it as the heart of their operation, the central nexus of their ritualistic activities. It was here, according to the prophecies, that the final gateway would be opened, unleashing the ancient evil upon the world. The thought sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. The scale of the Obsidian Hand's ambition was breathtaking, terrifying in its audacity. They weren't just aiming to conquer the world. They were aiming to destroy it, to unravel the very fabric of creation, replacing it with a void of nothingness. The weight of responsibility bore down on her. The Covenant, with its small band of devoted followers, felt like a tiny candle flickering against a raging inferno. Yet, Sarah refused to yield to despair. Her faith, forged in the fires of adversity, burned brighter than ever. She knew that God's power transcended even the darkest evil, that even in the face of annihilation, hope could endure. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. Sarah and her fellow Covenant members worked tirelessly, decoding more of the ancient texts, piecing together the fragments of the Obsidian Hand's plan. They were aided by a surprising ally, a former Obsidian Hand member, a man named Thomas, who had had a profound change of heart, haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. His testimony confirmed the accuracy of the ancient texts and revealed disturbing details about the organization's internal structure and its ruthless methods. Thomas spoke of secret meetings in secluded locations, encrypted communications, and elaborate codes that protected their activities from detection. Thomas revealed that the Obsidian Hand was funded by a network of powerful, secretive organizations, some dating back centuries. They weren't motivated by greed or power in the traditional sense. Their driving force was a deep-seated hatred of God, a desire to obliterate his creation and impose their nihilistic worldview on the world. This hatred, Thomas revealed, was so powerful, so consuming, that it clouded any rational thought or concern for the consequences of their actions. He described the rituals as horrifyingly intricate, involving human sacrifice and the invocation of demonic entities. The artifacts they used were not mere trinkets. They were conduits of immense power, imbued with dark energy, capable of amplifying the ancient evil's influence. Thomas confessed to having played a key role in acquiring some of these artifacts, a burden that weighed heavily on his soul. With Thomas's help, the Covenant began to formulate a counter-strategy. They couldn't confront the Obsidian Hand directly. They were too powerful, their influence too pervasive. Their approach had to be different, more subtle, more strategic. They needed to disrupt the Obsidian Hand's operations, to expose their machinations, and to rally support against them. They had to warn the world, however difficult that might be in the face of widespread skepticism and disbelief. Prayer became their weapon, faith their shield. They spent hours in fervent prayer, seeking God's guidance and strength. They knew the battle ahead would be long and arduous, a struggle against a formidable foe armed with ancient evils and centuries of cunning manipulation. But they also knew that they were not alone. They had God on their side, and that was a power that far surpassed any earthly force. The light of faith, though seemingly small against the encroaching darkness, burned ever brighter, a testament to their unwavering belief in the ultimate triumph of good over evil. The serpent coiled tighter, but the light refused to be extinguished. The fight was far from over, but the Covenant, armed with faith and guided by the divine plan, was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. First encounter with the organization. The old Covenant house creaked and groaned around them, a symphony of settling timbers that mirrored the unease in Sarah's heart. The chilling premonition that had haunted her since the cryptic texts surfaced intensified. It wasn't just the impending global crisis, the unsettling silence where the Rapture should have been. It was something deeper, something ancient and profoundly evil. The organization, the shadowy entity she'd only glimpsed in fragmented messages and whispered rumors, was no longer a theoretical threat. It was real, and it was acting. Their first encounter wasn't a dramatic confrontation, no masked figures or fiery explosions. It was subtler, more insidious. It started with the birds. The vibrant chorus of songbirds that usually filled the dawn had vanished, replaced by an unnerving silence. Then came the unsettling stillness of the usually bustling town of Havenwood. The air hung heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread. It was as if the very life had been leached from the land, leaving behind a hollow shell of what once was. Later that day, while retrieving water from the well, a well that had inexplicably run dry several days ago, Sarah noticed it. Scrawled on the weathered oak that bordered the well, a symbol. Not just any symbol, but the same chilling sigil that had appeared repeatedly in the ancient texts. It was a serpent coiled around a dying star, its scales shimmering with an unnatural luminescence even in the dim light. A wave of nausea washed over her. The symbol pulsed with a sickening energy, a palpable sense of malice that vibrated through her very being. John, ever the pragmatist, suggested it might be a coincidence, the work of some misguided teenager. But Sarah knew better. The feeling of dread wasn't a figment of her imagination. It was a tangible presence, a suffocating weight pressing down on them. She recalled the texts, their dire warnings of an organization that had manipulated events for centuries, subtly influencing world affairs to pave the way for its ultimate goal, the annihilation of faith. This symbol, this blatant display of their power, was a declaration of intent. That evening, as they huddled around the flickering candlelight, praying for guidance, a low hum began to emanate from the nearby woods. It started subtly, almost imperceptible, but grew steadily, building into a resonant thrum that vibrated through the very floorboards beneath their feet. Fear tightened its icy grip around Sarah's heart. This wasn't a natural sound. It was mechanical, yet possessed a malevolent undercurrent that chilled them to the bone. They held each other, their faith the only anchor in the swirling storm of fear. Cautiously, armed with nothing but their faith and a rusty shovel, they ventured into the darkness. The hum grew stronger, guiding them deeper into the woods, the oppressive silence broken only by the unsettling drone. The trees seemed to writhe, their branches twisted into grotesque shapes under the pale moonlight. They were being watched. They felt it instinctively, the eyes of unseen beings piercing the darkness. Finally, they reached a clearing. In the center, bathed in an eerie green glow, stood a structure of impossible geometry. It was a metallic monolith, sleek and obsidian, humming with the same unsettling energy that had drawn them there. Runes, similar to the serpent sigil on the oak tree, were etched into its surface, glowing faintly. The very air crackled with an unnatural energy, a power that felt ancient and profoundly evil. Around the monolith, figures moved silently. They were cloaked in dark robes, their faces hidden in shadow, their movements fluid and unnervingly precise. They weren't human, not entirely. There was something inhuman about their posture, their grace, their very essence. They weren't attacking. They were working, their actions methodical and purposeful, as if preparing for some grand ritual. Their movements seemed strangely synchronized, as though they were a single entity manifesting in multiple forms. Sarah felt a profound sense of dread wash over her. This was it, the physical manifestation of the shadowy organization, the ancient evil described in the texts. This wasn't just some conspiracy theory or a product of overactive imaginations. It was tangible, real, and terrifyingly powerful. It confirmed their worst fears, solidifying their resolve even as it sent shivers down their spines. They witnessed the organization's malevolent purpose, not through words or threats, but through the eerie, almost ritualistic preparations before them. The humming intensified, the green glow brightening. This wasn't just observation, this was a prelude. Retreating was their only option, a silent, desperate retreat fueled by adrenaline and prayer. They didn't look back, their hearts pounding in unison, the humming of the monolith echoing in their ears. They knew they'd seen something that could shatter the world as they knew it. They had witnessed the dark heart of the organization, and it was far more terrifying than they could ever have imagined. The following days were filled with a frantic scramble to understand what they'd seen. The ancient texts, previously cryptic, started to take on a new and horrifying clarity. The organization wasn't just interested in disrupting the Rapture. They sought to eradicate faith itself, to extinguish the light of God from the earth, to plunge humanity into an eternal night. The serpent and the dying star, symbols of destruction and the extinguishing of hope, were more than just warnings. They were a promise of what was to come. Sarah delved deeper into the texts, uncovering passages that spoke of ancient rituals, of sacrifices, and of a power capable of warping reality itself. She learned about the organization's history, stretching back millennia, their influence subtly weaving through the tapestry of human history. She learned of their methods, their meticulous planning, their chilling ability to manipulate events from the shadows. It wasn't a random act of chaos. It was a precisely orchestrated campaign designed to usher in a new age of darkness. The implications were staggering. The organization wasn't just a threat to their personal safety. It was a threat to the very fabric of reality, a threat to the very existence of humanity as they knew it. The comforting shield of their faith felt brittle, threatened by the sheer scale of the evil they were facing. Doubt, a chilling serpent in its own right, began to whisper insidious suggestions in the quiet moments, but the unwavering faith that had bound them together remained, though tested like never before. Their small community, the Covenant, became a fortress of faith against the encroaching darkness. Days turned into nights filled with prayer, study, and fervent discussions. They shared their fears, their doubts, their unwavering belief in God's ultimate victory. Their faith became their weapon, their shield against the encroaching darkness. They were no longer simply individuals facing a global crisis. They were soldiers in a spiritual war, fighting to preserve the light of God in the face of overwhelming evil. The weight of the world felt heavy, heavier than the stones of the Covenant house. They knew they were far from alone. Others had seen the signs, felt the chilling presence of the organization. Whispers reached them, messages carried on the wind, stories told in hushed tones of strange occurrences, of unsettling symbols, of a creeping darkness that threatened to consume everything. They were not alone in the fight, but they were vastly outnumbered. They spent hours poring over the ancient texts, trying to decipher the organization's plans, searching for clues, for any hint of weakness, any chink in their formidable armor. They were looking for a strategy not just for survival, but for victory. They understood that they couldn't simply wait for God's intervention. They had to act, to fight, to use the gifts and talents God had bestowed upon them. This was a battle for the very soul of humanity, a fight for the future of faith itself. And as they faced the terrifying reality of their task, their faith, though tested to its limits, burned brighter than ever before. The light of God, seemingly insignificant against the encroaching darkness, shone powerfully, illuminating their path forward into the looming war. They prayed for strength, guidance, and the wisdom to know what they needed to do next, knowing that their faith, their trust in God, was their ultimate weapon. The serpent coiled tighter, but the light refused to be extinguished. The battle was far from over, but the covenant, armed with faith and guided by the divine plan, was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead.